Hello everyone, Happy New Year and welcome to an all-new season of Mountain Lake Journal. I'm Tom Helling. This week, the new year brings changes to the political landscape in Albany as the new legislative session gets underway this coming week.
The office of Governor according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Governor Andrew Cuomo was sworn in on New Year's Day and began his third term with a speech at historic Ellis Island, where the ancestors of millions of Americans arrived as immigrants. The governor focused much of his inaugural address not on state but national issues, including immigration. Without mentioning President Trump by name, Cuomo said New Yorkers and Americans are living in a time of global and national unrest and growing division. The governor says he'll try to remedy some of that with a legislative agenda that he calls the most progressive in New York history.
Within my first 100 days, I will propose to the new Democratic legislature the most progressive agenda this state has ever seen, period. From voting reforms to Roe v. Wade for New York, to protecting a woman's right to choose, to better gun laws, to health care protection, to legalizing marijuana, to protecting the labor movement, to a Green New Deal, to real criminal justice reform, we will make history.
And Cuomo says that will be possible because for the first time in a decade, the Democrats are in control, with solid majorities in both the Assembly and the state Senate.
Our new legislature is thankfully now governed by Democrats. I feel liberated. I felt like I was fighting with one arm tied behind my back.
And we're joined this week by North Country Assemblyman Billy Jones. Welcome. Happy New Year. It's good to see you.
Good to be here. Happy New Year to you.
You just heard what Andrew Cuomo said he's been forced to do for a few years now, govern with one arm tied behind his back. So with the Democrats now firmly in control, what's going to be the priorities for this year?
Well, I think the governor laid out his priorities, and I think when we get into the new year, the legislature will lay out their priorities, and we have to come to a match to see what's going to get through. I know the governor's put out an aggressive agenda. I don't think the legislature is going to be too, I think they're going to, it's a wait and see approach. A lot of things do match up with some of what the majorities want, but I don't think they're in the mood to get anything crammed down their throats either. So we'll have to see what the governor sends down or how bills come to fruition.
Anything on the laundry list that you think will fly through easily that maybe has been held up by Senate Republicans in past years and will probably
I don't think anything
quickly
in Albany flies through with no problem. I would think women's health, reproductive rights would go through fairly easy.
Getting that put in New York state law?
Yeah, I would think that's one that will go through easy and probably within the first couple of days of session or first couple of weeks. You know, the governor has a laundry list of things. He did say that it would be one of the most progressive agendas put forward or put through in the first 100 days. But my concern, as always, are what benefits the residents of the North Country and what their concerns are. So that's how I govern. You know, the statewide issues get a lot of the headlines, and I think they're talking points for a lot of my colleagues, which is fine. But the work really is done in the district here, meeting the concerns of the residents here. My staff does an excellent job of that, and day-to-day operations are what people see when the rubber meets the road, basically.
And you talked about progressive. A lot of people may cringe in the North Country when they hear a very progressive agenda that automatically, for many, makes them think that this is going to be a heavy focus on New York City and a lot of issues in the city and in the big urban areas of New York, and that could end up affecting the North Country.
Sure.
Do you share those concerns?
I'm cautious with the approach that's taken. I'm cautious looking at things. That's why I won't sit here and say this will get through, this is going to happen, that will happen. But as always, the people of the North Country are my number one priority, and I do believe that we will have a seat at the table in Albany. But of course, there are going to be a lot of changes, especially in the upper chamber has gone fully Democratic. So there will be changes, but I always take a cautious approach, and I always like to hear from my constituents on what their priorities are, and that's what my priorities are.
From the governor's laundry list, what do you think will be the top priority for Democrats?
I guess he's talking marijuana now. In the last couple of weeks, legalizing marijuana will be his top priority. In the legislature, I think there are several issues that will be priorities as well, but we'll have to see what the governor sends down to us. Like I said, I think we want to see what is in the bill. It's going to be a wait and see approach. I just think from the past couple of years being in the legislature, and me personally, I don't like to see things crammed down my throat from the governor. If he sends a program bill down there, I think we should take a look at it, see what's in it, and I will certainly see how it affects the people here in the North Country.
It looks as if there will be a push this year to legalize recreational marijuana. Where are you on that? In the past, when we've talked with you, you've had concerns about it.
Yeah, and I still do have those concerns. That's why I want to wait and see what's in the bill. I'm hearing from residents on it, and I encourage my residents to reach out to me to hear their concerns. There's concerns in the recovery community, concerns with law enforcement. I certainly talk to them on a regular basis. I do believe it will be legalized in some form, but then let's see what that looks like. Are we going to have dispensaries? Are we going to have personal growing? There's just so many questions to this, and when people ask me how do you come down on it, I have to see what's in a bill or see what's in the proposal to figure out where I come down on it. I'm certainly for decriminalizing marijuana. I don't think if you made a mistake when you were in college or in high school or what have it, I don't think that should be on the record and should follow you for the rest of your life. I think we need to give people a second chance on that. But certainly full out legalization on it, I want to see what's in the bill.
And we heard this week the governor's likely going to put this in his budget. So he probably is looking at the, $1.3 billion in tax revenues that people are projecting could come from this.
And I think we ought to be very cautious when we do that as well. I don't know. I mean, anybody can make a projection on what legalization of marijuana will bring in for tax revenue. I do believe that we shouldn't be doing it solely for the purpose of tax revenue, but the governor will probably put it in the budget and expect these revenues to come in. I think we need to be very cautious on that. And if we overregulate it anyway, if you overregulate any product, Tom, and we've seen in the past as far as tobacco, when our friends to the north tried to do that several years ago, people are still going to find illegal sources to get that product. So we can't overtax it and overregulate it anyway. So we need to take a look at what is in the bill and how we're going to implement it. I've always said, no matter what we're talking about, implementation is the most important part of how we do things.
And when you talk about the tax revenues, you have people already lining up saying, well, let's dedicate those tax revenues. Let's for the MTA, for the subways in New York City, for other things, for education. Where do you fall on that? If marijuana passes, is legalized and taxed, should that be money dedicated to something that New York needs? Sure.
I believe that money coming from the tax revenue from the sale of marijuana has been spent probably 100 times over by now by my colleagues, by organizations, by everyone from education to infrastructure. But that's why I don't think we can count too much on the revenue. I do believe we need to provide law enforcement with some tools because this is a new product that will be out there. They need some tools to help them out. I've talked about we live in a very rural area. I want to see that our public safety still is number one concern. I want to make sure that drivers, people that are using this aren't driving, and law enforcement does need tools for that. I think education, I don't think you can go wrong by putting money into education. Our schools here still do need funding. We have some poor school districts here in the North Country. I'd be open to that. But I have a lot of colleagues in New York City that want to see all those revenues go to the MTA. And they have good reasons for that as well, because the MTA is kind of a mess. It is a mess. It needs a massive upgrade in their infrastructure, but we'll have to see. Like I said, that money has been spent 100 times over. Same thing as legalizing of gambling here in New York State. When there was a lot of talk about that last session.
Mm-hmm. Sports gambling.
Yes, sports gambling. That money was spent probably 200 times over on certain issues.
One thing we didn't hear from the governor was talk about health care. A number of progressives have said they are going to push for universal health care in New York, make New York the first state. Other states have tried. They haven't found sufficient funding. The Assembly has passed the New York Health Act 4 years in a row, I believe. Do you think that we will see both the Assembly and the Senate proposing universal health care?
I think the proposal will be out there. I think the votes will be there. Once again, when we're talking about when you throw marijuana into the budget process, how can you not throw health care into the process? This governor has said repeatedly, anything with a financial, anything with a cost or a revenue has to be put in the budget. Certainly when you're talking about health care, that would have to be a budget decision. I will say on health care here in New York State, I believe everyone should have access to affordable health care. No question about it, bottom line. But we need help from our federal partners. This administration has said, or given every indication that they're not going to give us a waiver for their Medicare dollars or Medicaid dollars anyway. So we need our federal partners to implement that here in New York State. And I think you've seen the governor really shy away from that, strictly because of the financial cost to it. There's been figures out there of $168 billion a year, one or the other, whatever you're going at. But we have $70 billion in our budget that we spend on health care every year, Tom. The latest budget was close to $70 billion with federal, state, and local input. We need to make sure that our health care is more affordable and accessible to people. We have programs right here in New York State that we can improve upon and do that as well. So let's take a look at that in the meantime. Do I think we will pass in the legislature the Medicare for all or single payer, whatever you want to see? Yes, but I think the governor is taking a real approach to, let's see how we're going to pay for it, which to his credit, I think we have to, we certainly have to look at that.
You and other lawmakers are about to get a big raise. I mean, a really big raise, about 60% pay raise over the next 3 years, $50,000 from $80,000 up to $130,000 a year. You will be the highest paid lawmakers in the nation. You haven't had a pay raise in 20 years, but is this justified and is this deserved by lawmakers, or do a lot of people look at this and go, wow, we don't get a 60% pay raise?
Yeah, I think you get a lot of people out there that say, why are you, what justifies a 50 or 60% pay raise to you? All I can say is I can speak for myself. I didn't take this job for the salary. I took this job as a full-time job, which many of my colleagues didn't. They have side businesses. I work hard every day for the residents here in the North Country. I don't know how you put a value on that. People probably value me when they go to the polls and vote on it. But as far as the big pay raise, I can see why it irks some people to say, hey, you know what, you didn't deserve that. But I feel as though I work hard every day for the residents here, and I'm not going to change my work ethic or anything I've done in the prior 2 years for the next 2 years. I will say it's not a complete pay raise. It's phased in over 2 years. I have a major problem with, and I like some of the reforms in it, I really do. Banning outside income and putting a stymie on Lulus. I've been a proponent. I actually ran on banning outside income. Let's be full-time legislators. Let's not have that weighing in on it, because we can see with the problems before and some of our leaders, it was tied to outside income.
Right, which this does. This limits outside income to 15%.
Certainly does.
And the stipends you're talking about, the additional pay that lawmakers get.
And some of those are deserved as well.
Limits or eliminates that.
Yes, some of those are deserved as well. I believe that. But I like that the ban on outside income is there. That's something I ran on. That's something I believe that can help clean up government, and we'll let people judge how this pay raise comes. But I don't like how it's tied into the budget. A lot of people don't realize it's tied into an on-time budget for the next 2 years. That means the legislature and the governor have to come to an agreement on April 1st on an on-time budget to get the out years in that raise. I don't think that's good government. I don't think the residents of New York State think that's good government. So we're tied to getting a pay raise. We're tying that to an on-time budget. It's not good government. I don't think that part should be in whatsoever.